The evening was quiet in Daniel's apartment. A soft hum from the city outside drifting through the half-open window. The warm light from a small lamp made the living room feel calm, and his girlfriend, Mia, sat across from him, scrolling through her tablet with a lazy smile. Daniel was just about to pour them both a drink when the door slid open without a knock. Both of them froze. In the doorway stood a tiny alien girl. No more than 10 years old in human years, her skin a soft shade of blue with faint silver lines. Running across her cheeks like natural markings, she stepped inside with small, deliberate movements, her large eyes glowing faintly in the light. She didn't say a word. Instead, she fixed her gaze on Mia. The look was not the curious glance of a child, or the shy stare of someone meeting a stranger. It was steady, direct, and almost challenging. Mia blinked, clearly uncomfortable. Daniel? Who is this? Daniel shook his head slowly. I have no idea. The alien girl's gaze didn't shift. As if Mia were the only person in the room, the silence became heavy. The kind that makes the air feel too thick to breathe. Daniel set down the bottle in his hand, unsure if he should speak or move closer. The girl's small boots made a faint tapping sound as she walked across the room, never breaking eye contact with Mia. Her movements were calm, deliberate, almost regal for someone so small. Mia frowned, sitting up straighter. Is something wrong? She asked, her voice holding a mix of annoyance and unease. Daniel started to rise. Hey, maybe we should, before he could finish. The alien girl stopped right in front of Mia. She tilted her head slightly, her glowing eyes narrowing just a fraction. Then, without warning, she turned away from Mia and walked toward Daniel. The shift in focus was sudden, and Daniel found himself holding his breath. The girl reached him, looked up for a second, and then, without asking, climbed onto his lap. She sat there like she had done it 1,000 times before, her tiny frame fitting comfortably against him. Daniel froze, unsure what to do with his hands. Mia's jaw dropped. Excuse me? The alien girl leaned back slightly, as if making herself at home. Her expression was calm, but there was something fierce. In her posture, Daniel could feel her small hands gripping his arm gently, like she was making a claim. I don't know what's happening, Daniel whispered, his eyes darting between Mia and the girl. Mia stood, her tablet slipping from her lap onto the couch. Daniel, get her off you, she demanded, but the girl didn't move, didn't even react. She just stayed there, watching Mia out of the corner of her glowing eyes. Daniel swallowed hard, feeling the tension spike even higher. The moment felt surreal. A strange child, a silent standoff, and a girlfriend who looked ready to explode outside. The muffled sounds of alien ships and hover traffic seemed far away. Right now, the whole world was just the three of them. In this small room, Mia crossed her arms. Seriously, Daniel? Who is she? Why is she acting like this? I told you, I don't know, he replied, his voice tight. The girl shifted slightly on his lap. Not in discomfort, but in a way that made it clear she had no intention of leaving. She glanced up at him briefly. And for the first time, she spoke, but not in English. It was a soft, melodic phrase in a language Daniel didn't understand. The words felt oddly familiar, like something from a half-remembered dream. Mia took a step back, her eyes narrowing. Daniel. This is weird, and I don't like it. Daniel felt his pulse quicken. There was something about the girl's presence that pulled at his memory. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't place it. The air between Mia and the girl felt charged, like two opposing forces refusing to yield. Daniel shifted slightly, but the girl's grip on his arm tightened just enough to make her message clear. She wasn't letting go. And in that moment, Daniel had this strange feeling that whatever this was, it was only the beginning. Mia stood near the couch, her arms folded tightly, her expression hard. The tiny alien girl still sat on Daniel's lap, her glowing eyes watching every small movement Mia made. Daniel tried to speak, but the strange tension made his throat feel dry. Finally, Mia broke the silence. "Daniel, this isn't normal. She's acting like she knows you." Daniel shook his head. "I've never seen her before in my life," he said slowly. But even as the words left his mouth, doubt crept in. Something about the way she looked at him. It felt like recognition, not chance. The girl spoke again. This time a little louder, her words still in that unfamiliar, melodic language. Daniel frowned, leaning slightly toward her. "I don't understand you," he said gently, but she just smiled faintly, as if she knew something he didn't. A sudden knock on the door made everyone jump. Daniel carefully set the girl beside him on the couch and went to answer it. Standing there was his neighbor, Mr. Harris. A human in his 50s with wide eyes and an anxious look. "Daniel," he whispered. Glancing into the apartment, "Do you know who that is?" Daniel shook his head. "No, do you?" Mr. Harris nodded slowly. "That's the child from the embassy incident," he said, his voice dropping lower. "She knows you." Daniel's stomach tightened. The embassy incident. Mr. Harris nodded again. "It was years ago, remember? The riots, the fires, and that rescue they never explained." Daniel tried to remember. Flashes of a smoky sky, the sound of shouting. Carrying something small through the chaos, he blinked, shaking his head. I thought that was just a dream." Mr. Harris gave him a sharp look. "Dream or not, she's here now, and that means trouble." Before Daniel could ask more, the neighbor stepped back, muttering something about keeping the door locked. Before disappearing down the hall, Daniel closed the door slowly, his mind spinning. When he turned back, the alien girl was standing now, her small hands clenched, her gaze still fixed on Mia. Mia took a step forward. "Daniel, I don't care what your neighbor says. She needs to leave." The girl's head snapped toward Mia, her glowing eyes narrowing. Then she pointed at Daniel and spoke in a clear but broken human tongue. "You. Mine." The words hung in the air like a spark before fire. Mia's mouth opened in disbelief. What did she just say? Daniel didn't answer. Because his thoughts were a storm? Why would she say that? And why did the words send a strange pull through his chest? The girl walked back to him, her small boots tapping softly on the floor. She stood in front of him, looking up, her voice soft but sure. "Long time." "Find you," Daniel crouched a little to meet her gaze. "Find me." Why? But she just tilted her head, as if the answer was too simple to explain. Mia let out a frustrated sound. "This is insane, Daniel. I'm not staying here with some random alien kid claiming you like you're a pet." Daniel glanced at her. "Mia, wait," but she was already grabbing her bag, her face a mix of anger and disbelief. The alien girl moved closer to Daniel, almost like she was guarding him. "Mia, please. Just give me a minute to figure this out," he said, his voice low. Mia shook her head. "You figure it out without me?" And with that, she walked out, the door hissing shut behind her. Silence fell again, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. Daniel turned to the girl, who is now looking up at him with a softer expression. She reached out, touching his sleeve gently. "Safe now," she whispered in her own language, the words still carrying that strange familiarity. Daniel sat on the couch, motioning for her to sit. And she did, right beside him this time, her shoulder barely touching his arm. He stared at her, trying to piece together the blurry memories of that night years ago. He could see fire in the streets, shadows moving, someone screaming in an alien voice. He could feel the weight of something small in his arms as he ran through smoke. He looked at the girl, her silver facial markings catching the lamplight. Was that you?" he asked softly. She gave the faintest smile, and for the first time, she nodded. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine, because suddenly he knew she wasn't here by accident, and if she had found him after all these years, someone else might be looking for her too. By morning, the apartment felt different. The light from the rising sun spilled through the blinds, but the air was thick with unspoken questions. Daniel sat at the small kitchen table, sipping coffee, his mind still replaying the girl's words. From last night, across from him, the tiny alien girl sat with her legs tucked under her. Watching him with quiet focus, she hadn't left his side since she arrived. When he moved to the kitchen, she followed. When he sat, she sat. It wasn't just company. It was as if she was guarding something. Daniel wasn't sure if that something was him or herself. He cleared his throat. "Look, I don't know what happened years ago, but if I saved you, you're safe now." The girl tilted her head slightly, her glowing eyes softening. "You? Mine?" she said again, this time with more certainty. Daniel set down his mug. "What does that mean? In your language? In your customs?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached forward and placed her small hand over his. Her touch was light but deliberate, like a seal being made. "You protect me. I stay," she whispered in broken human words before Daniel could respond. The sound of voices drifted from the hallway outside. Curious neighbors had heard about the strange visitor. And now a few stood at his door, peeking in through the half-open frame. "Is it true?" one of them asked. "She's from that embassy riot," another whispered. "I heard she's from a royal bloodline." Daniel sighed and stepped to the door. "I don't know anything yet. Give us some space," he said, closing it firmly. When he turned back, the girl was still watching him. Her small chin lifted as if in quiet pride. Then came a sharp, angry knock. Daniel opened the door again, expecting another nosy neighbor, but instead it was MIA. She stepped inside, her eyes narrowing when she saw the girl still here. "I thought she'd be gone by now," Mia said coldly. Daniel rubbed his temple. "Mia, she has nowhere to go, and I think she might know me from before." Mia gave a short laugh. "From before?" "Daniel, she's a stranger." But before he could reply, the girl stood up, her small figure between him and Mia. She looked directly at Mia, her glowing eyes steady. "You go," she said in her halting human tongue. Mia's mouth fell open. What did she just say to me? Daniel put up a hand. "Hey, enough, both of you." But the girl wasn't done. She stepped closer to Daniel and slipped her hand into his, holding it firmly in front of Mia. "You?" "Mine," she repeated, her voice clear now. It was more than a statement, it was a declaration. Mia's face turned red. "Daniel, this is insane." "She's a kid, I know," he said, his voice calm but uneasy. But he couldn't ignore the way the girl clung to him, or the strange weight her words carried. Mia shook her head, grabbed her bag again, and moved toward the door. "You choose, Daniel, me, or this." "Whatever this is," she said, her voice trembling with frustration. Daniel froze, caught between two worlds he didn't understand, before he could answer. The girl pulled him down slightly so she could whisper something in his ear. The words were in her own language, but somehow he felt their meaning. She was telling him she had searched for him for years, that she had walked across whole cities, crossed borders, avoided enemies, all to find him again. Mia saw his hesitation and gave a bitter laugh. "Yeah, I thought so," she said before leaving, the door closing hard behind her. Silence returned. The girl climbed back onto his lap without asking, sitting there as if nothing had happened. Daniel leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You're going to make my life very complicated, aren't you?" The girl didn't answer, just rested her head against his chest. Outside, the city continued its morning rhythm, hover cars passing, market stalls opening, distant ship engines humming. But inside, Daniel knew something had shifted. The girl had made her claim, and whether he understood it or not, the look in her eyes told him she wasn't going anywhere. That night, the city was quieter than usual. A faint mist rolled between the tall buildings, making the neon lights glow in the darkness. Inside Daniel's apartment, the air felt still, heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The tiny alien girl sat cross-legged on the couch, staring at the window, her glowing eyes reflecting the dim light of the streets below. Daniel was in the kitchen, rinsing a glass, when he noticed she hadn't moved for nearly 10 minutes. "What are you looking at?" he asked softly. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head slightly toward the glass. "Shadows," she whispered. Daniel frowned, glancing out, but saw nothing except the faint outlines of distant hovercars. When he turned back, she was still staring, her small hands resting tightly on her knees. Her stillness made him uneasy. Finally, she spoke again in her broken human tongue. "They look," Daniel's brow furrowed. "Who?" She didn't answer, only raised a finger and pointed toward the darkness outside. He followed her gaze. At first, he saw nothing, but then movement. A tall figure, half hidden in the mist, was standing across the narrow street, looking up at his window. Even from here, Daniel could tell it wasn't human. The figure stepped closer into the light. It was an alien warrior, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in black armor that shimmered like oil. The helmet had no visor, only a dark faceplate with faint red lights where eyes should be. Daniel's pulse quickened. The warrior raised a single hand and curled it into a fist, not a greeting, but a threat. The girl stood now, her small body tense. Her voice was low but firm. "Clan," she said. Daniel turned to her. "Your clan." She nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing. A knock at the window made him jump. The warrior was right there now, on the narrow balcony outside his apartment. Daniel moved toward the glass cautiously. The warrior's voice, deep and cold, came through the barrier. "Return her?" Daniel shook his head instinctively. "She's not yours to take." The warrior tilted his head slightly. "She belongs to the clan, not to you. Human, she's a child," Daniel said, his voice hardening. "She belongs somewhere safe." The warrior's tone didn't change. "Safe is not your concern." The girl stepped beside Daniel, her small frame dwarfed by the alien outside. She spoke rapidly in her language, her words sharp. The warrior responded with a single phrase, and Daniel didn't need to understand the language to know it was a warning. Then the warrior leaned closer to the glass, his voice dropping. "This is your only chance. Human, give her back, or face the clan." Daniel felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. His mind flashed back to the embassy chaos years ago. The heat of fire, the sound of shouts, his arms carrying something small through the smoke. It was her. It had always been her. He looked at the girl now, and her eyes were fixed on his, silently begging him not to let go. Daniel straightened his back and turned to the warrior. "She's staying with me," he said. For a moment, the warrior didn't move. Then, without a word, he stepped back into the mist, disappearing into the shadows of the street. Daniel locked the balcony door and pulled the curtains closed. The girl climbed onto the couch again, but this time she didn't sit in silence. She leaned forward, speaking in a mix of her language and broken human words. "More come." "Not just him," she said. Daniel rubbed his face. "More? How many?" She shook her head slowly. "All maybe." The rest of the night passed in uneasy, quiet. Daniel sat in the armchair near the couch. Unable to sleep, the girl stayed close, her small eyes half closed, but her body tense like a soldier. On watch, every faint sound from the street made Daniel's chest tighten. He had no idea why they wanted her so badly, but one thing was clear: they weren't going to stop. And now, whether he liked it or not, he was part of this. Morning came slowly. The pale light crept across the apartment floor. But it didn't bring peace. Daniel sat at the edge of the couch, rubbing his tired eyes. The tiny alien girl was still curled up near him, her breathing slow but restless. Every so often, her fingers would tighten around the sleeve of his shirt. As if making sure he hadn't gone anywhere, a knock at the door shattered the quiet. Daniel rose cautiously and opened it. Mia stood there, her arms folded, her jaw tight. "I heard there was someone at your window last night," she said, her voice sharp. "Daniel. This is getting dangerous." Daniel stepped aside, letting her in. The girl woke instantly, her eyes narrowing at Mia. The tension between them returned like a storm cloud over the room. Mia didn't waste time. "You have to give her back, Daniel." The words hit him like cold water. "She's not a thing to give back," he said. "She's a child, and she's in trouble," Mia replied. "Her clan is clearly looking for her, and they're not going to stop. You're going to get yourself killed trying to keep her here." Daniel opened his mouth, but before he could answer, the girl slid off the couch and stood between them. Her small hand gripped his. Her voice trembling, but clear. "No go." Mia stared at her, then at Daniel. "Do you hear yourself? You're letting a child decide this?" Daniel sighed. "Mia, you don't understand. Years ago, during the embassy fire, I think I carried her out." Mia's eyebrows shot up. "And that means what?" "That you're suddenly her guardian for life." The girl looked up at him, her glowing eyes pleading. "She says she's safe with me," Daniel murmured. Mia shook her head. "Safe? Daniel, safe is not having alien warriors at your window." Before Daniel could respond, a low rumble shook the building. He crossed to the window. Pulling the curtain aside just a little, down on the street, 2 more armored warriors stood watching. The entrance, one of them spoke into a communicator, his voice echoing faintly through the morning air. Daniel's stomach sank. "They're here again," he whispered. Mia backed toward the door, her face pale. "Daniel, this is insane. I'm telling you one last time, give her to them and walk away." The girl's grip on his hand tightened until it hurt. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Stay. Please." Daniel looked between them, Mia's fear, the girl's desperation, the warriors outside. This wasn't just a problem. It was a choice that would decide everything. He knelt so he was eye level with the girl. "If you stay, they'll come after both of us," he said. Her answer was immediate. "I know." "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking slightly. She hesitated, then said softly, "Because you saved me." "So I save you too." Daniel's throat tightened. Mia threw up her hands. "This is ridiculous, Daniel. She's a kid. She can't save you from anything. You're going to die if you keep this up." The girl turned to Mia, her small voice suddenly steady. "Not die. Fight." Daniel blinked at her. There was something in the way she said it, quiet strength that didn't match her size. Outside, the warriors moved closer to the building, their black armor gleaming in the sunlight. Daniel's chest pounded. As he realized he didn't have much time, if he gave her up, the danger would vanish, and his life would return to normal. But if he kept her, the danger would grow. Yet deep inside, he already knew the answer. He stood, facing the window. "If they want her, they'll have to come through me," he said. Mia stared at him in disbelief. "You've lost your mind." "Maybe," he said quietly. "But I'm not abandoning her." The girl stepped closer to him, her small frame pressed against his side. Her eyes met his, and in that silent exchange, the choice was sealed. Mia shook her head and turned toward the door. "I can't be part of this," she said before. Walking out without looking back, the door closed with a dull thud. Daniel took a deep breath, his hand resting gently on the girl's shoulder. Outside, the warriors were still there. They would come sooner or later. But now, Daniel wasn't just a bystander. He was her protector. And no matter what happened next, he wasn't letting go. The next day began with the sound of heavy boots in the street. Daniel looked out from behind the curtain and saw them. Not two warriors this time, but 6. All wore black armor with silver crests on their shoulders. Their presence was like a wall of shadow in the morning light. The tiny alien girl stood beside him, silent. Her eyes locked on them. She didn't seem afraid. But her body was tense. By mid-morning, a crowd had gathered. Humans whispered nervously, while a few aliens from other species watched with interest. No one dared to get too close. The 6 warriors spread out. Their leader stepping forward. He raised a hand toward the building. His voice loud enough for all to hear. "Send her out, human. She belongs to the clan." Daniel stepped onto the balcony. "She stays with me." He called down. The crowd murmured. The leader tilted his head. "You speak as if you have the right." "I saved her life," Daniel said. "I won't hand her over to people who show up armed and threatening." The leader's voice was calm, but sharp. "In our law, blood decides, not rescue." The girl moved to Daniel's side and shouted in her own language, her small voice cutting through the street noise. Gasps rose from the alien onlookers. One elderly alien woman whispered to another. She invoked the Guardian's oath. Daniel looked down at the warriors. What did she say? The leader's expression darkened. "She named you her chosen guardian." "What does that mean?" Daniel asked. The elderly alien woman in the crowd answered for him. "In her people's customs, the one named guardian becomes family." Stronger than blood. Daniel blinked. "So that means, the leader interrupted. "You have taken a role you cannot understand, human." The girl spoke again. Shorter this time, the leader glared. "She claims you are bound by our highest tradition, the blood oath." The crowd's murmuring grew louder. A human man near the front called out, "That's their law, then she's his now." The leader's hand twitched toward his weapon. But he didn't draw it. Instead, he said, "The law is not so simple. She is of royal blood, and the clan decides her fate." Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady. "Not anymore," she decided. The standoff grew heavier. The warriors didn't move, but their presence pressed like weight against Daniel's chest. The girl stood in front of him now, her small figure shielding him in her own way. It was strange, the protector and the protected switching roles. One of the younger warriors shifted uneasily, glancing at the leader. Finally, the leader said, "If you choose to keep her, you choose to stand against the clan." Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. "Then I stand." The crowd reacted in a mix of shock and admiration. The girl reached up and took his hand in both of hers. Her glowing eyes met his, and he knew she understood exactly what he'd just agreed to. The leader studied him for a long moment before turning away. "We will speak to the elders," he said. "If they accept, you will keep her. If they do not, we return." The warriors withdrew slowly, the crowd parting to let them pass. Daniel exhaled, only now realizing how tightly he'd been gripping the balcony rail. Inside, the girl tugged at his hand, pulling him toward the couch. She sat beside him, her voice soft. "Now." "Wait." Daniel rubbed his face. "Wait for what?" Her answer was simple. Decision. He stared out the window at the empty street. He didn't know what the elders would decide, but he did know one thing. He wasn't going to change his mind, even if it meant more warriors, more danger, and more nights without sleep. Because now it wasn't just about a promise or an old rescue. It was about family, and he wasn't going to lose her again. 3 days passed without a sign of the warriors. Each day felt heavier than the last. Daniel tried to go about his life, but the waiting gnawed at him. The tiny alien girl stayed close, never more than a few steps away. Sometimes she would sit by the window, watching the street below as if expecting someone. Other times she would curl up on the couch beside him, her head resting lightly against his arm. On the fourth morning, the sound of engines echoed down the street. Daniel stood and went to the window. A large silver transport descended slowly, its markings unlike the warrior's black armor. When it landed, a group emerged, elders of the clan. They were taller, their robes marked with intricate silver and gold designs. The crowd began to gather again, whispers rippling through them. The elders stopped in front of the building. Their leader, an older alien with pale markings, looked up toward Daniel's balcony. Daniel stepped outside, the girl at his side. The elder spoke, his voice calm but carrying authority. "You are the human who claims the child." Daniel nodded. "And she claims me." The elder tilted his head, studying the girl. "Is this true?" The girl's voice was steady. "Yes, he is my guardian." The elder's gaze lingered on her for a moment before returning to Daniel. "She is of royal blood," he said. "Her place is with her people." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Her place is where she feels safe." The elder's eyes softened slightly. "And she feels safe with you?" "Yes," the girl said before Daniel could answer. "With him always." A murmur ran through the crowd. The elder raised a hand for silence. "In our law, the guardian's oath is sacred," he said. "It cannot be undone by clan or crown." Daniel felt a weight lift from his chest. But the elder's voice grew more serious. "However, if you keep her, you accept all that comes with it. Enemies, danger, and the duty to protect her for life." Daniel glanced at the girl. She was looking up at him, her glowing eyes calm but full of trust. He took a breath. "I accept." The elder nodded slowly. "Then it is decided. She is yours, and you are hers." The crowd erupted in murmurs again, some shocked, others approving. The elders turned to leave, but the older one paused. He looked at the girl and spoke in their language. She replied softly, then stepped back toward Daniel. "What did he say?" Daniel asked. She smiled faintly. He said, "I have a home now." When the transport lifted away and the street emptied, the tension that had hung over the apartment finally eased. Daniel closed the balcony door and sat on the couch. The girl climbed onto his lap without hesitation, just as she had the first time she came. But this time, it wasn't a challenge. It was comfort. She rested her head against his chest, her small hands relaxed in her lap. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Daniel let out a slow breath, his arm resting gently around her. "You know," he said quietly, "the day you showed up, I had no idea what was happening." The girl made a small sound, almost like a laugh. "Now you know." "Yeah," Daniel said, a faint smile touching his lips. "Now I know." Outside, the city returned to its normal rhythm, but inside, the apartment felt different, warmer, safer. Daniel realized something then. She wasn't just staying because of an oath or a rescue. She was staying because she had chosen him, and he had chosen her. The girl shifted slightly, looking up at him. Her voice was soft but certain. "Forever," Daniel nodded. "Forever?" She smiled, closed her eyes, and leaned back against him. In that moment, Daniel understood the strange day she appeared. The stairs, the tension, the danger, it had all led here to this quiet, steady warmth, a lap that meant forever.